is to just talk about the so-called destructive phase. What I mean by destructive phase is a period during which Mao Zedong decided to bring down some of his colleagues, to criticize the very state and the party that he established. But after 1949, the task that the CCP faced, the Mao faced, was economic development. So Mao introduced, very shortly, some very radical economic policies, which resulted in economic disasters. And then he entrusted his associates, that is Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, with the very difficult task of fixing the economy, which was really at the edge of total collapse. What they did, very briefly, was just quietly abandon Mao's policies. But to Mao, this was a challenge. This was the effort to abandon his legacies. He waited until the Chinese economy recovered in 1964-65, and then he launched the Cultural Revolution. And the aim of Mao was very clear, was to remove those party cadres, leaders who had earlier abandoned his policies. So Mao could not come to the open to say, I want to remove Liu Shaoqi, I want to move Deng Xiaoping from the position of power. He had to first pursue a road which would eventually lead to the outbreak of Cultural Revolution without Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping knowing that they were the real targets. The Cultural Revolution actually didn't enjoy much support, with the exception of very small group of beneficiaries of the Cultural Revolution who rose to power. Mao had to establish a power base outside the regular party machinery. The person on your right is this guy by the name Luo Ruijing, Mr. Luo. And you can see from the slide, he was the chief of staffs of the People's Liberation Army. Now the second person, Mr. Peng. Mr. Peng Zhen, from the slide, you understand that he was the General Secretariat of the Central Committee, but at the same time, he was also the mayor of Beijing. Now, Mao's diehard supporters were mainly the so-called Long March veterans. Peng Zhen was not. The underground communist movement was led mainly by Liu Shaoqi, the chairman of the People's Republic. So this would help you understand why Mao wanted to remove some party cadres, but to protect some other party cadres. And this was due to the factional struggle within the CCP. That's why he named this campaign, this movement, Cultural Revolution. As to mislead his so-called opponents into believing that they were not the major targets of Cultural Revolution. Otherwise, his associates like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping would not agree to launching the Cultural Revolution. Mao Zedong also made Peng Zhen the mayor, one of the early targets of Cultural Revolution, the leader of this newly established Cultural Revolution group. This was a cynical move. That is, Mao actually wanted to remove Peng Zhen. But before removing him, he promoted him. Mao was now saying, okay, I put you in charge of leading the Cultural Revolution without telling Peng Zhen what would be the real goals of Cultural Revolution. So therefore, whatever Peng Zhen would do would be labeled by Mao as a political mistake. Peng Zhen, the leader of the Cultural Revolution group, came up with a February outline report. Actually, this was an outline which aimed at exercising some degree of control of the Cultural Revolution. They knew that Mao was up to something, but they didn't know what Mao was really aiming at. And they said, okay, let's come up with this outline. But I want you to pay attention to the fact that what Liu Shaoqi was trying to do was to try to shift Mao's attention, Mao's criticism away from them. He wanted Mao Zedong to focus on intellectuals. So basically what they were saying is that, these policies were in fact correct. Okay. But Chairman, now you say that there were problems. We think the problems were mainly with education. At this point, the control of Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping over the Chinese society in general was very firm. They controlled the party, they controlled the government, they controlled the army to some extent, they controlled universities. If you want to remove Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, where should you start, right? You must have a point where you could loosen Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping's control. Because it's very clear, I'm sure you all agree with this, without chaos, you cannot launch a revolution. What is important of this circular was that it identified the target for the Cultural Revolution. It identified the target as the representatives of the bourgeoisie who have infiltrated the party. That is, if you once opposed to Mao's economic policies. This was no matter a matter of different economic approaches. Okay, we don't regard you as a fellow comrade in the CCP anymore. Now we regard you as the representative of the bourgeoisie. Then a new Cultural Revolution group was established, and this was headed by Madam Mao, or Jiang Qing. Now, these developments were crucial in the sense that the dismissal of Peng Zhen allowed Mao to control Beijing. This was very important. And then now Mao's supporters, associates controlled national media organizations. And more importantly, the dismissal of Wu Ruiqing brought the People's Liberation Army under Mao and Marshal Lin's control. Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping were alerted. They realized that Mao was aiming at something. But still, they were not very clear what really Mao wanted to do. But what they did was that they said, all right, okay, Chairman, you have once said that they were representatives of the bourgeoisie who have infiltrated the party. Oh yeah, we agree. But they said they were primarily in the educational system. Mao wanted to create disorder from the educational sector first. And he wanted to motivate the students to use them as the vanguard of the Cultural Revolution. These sons and daughters of party cadres already knew that Mao was critical of the current educational system. That's why when Mao supported the Red Guard organization, when Mao encouraged them to criticize their teacher, they responded. And in place of the normal official party organizations, Cultural Revolution Committee was elected in each institute. This was Mao's first step to replace the established party machinery with a new power structure. And a very important announcement was made by the Education Ministry, and that is admission to higher school to higher schools was suspended for 6 months, and the university entrance exams were also abolished. For every one of us, everyone of my generation, we would not have formal education anymore in the coming 10 years during the Cultural Revolution. Roughly in 2 to 3 months, Red Guards were encouraged to go out to the society to smash the so-called 4 oaths. They call it Red Terror. They actually broke into the private houses. And then they searched private houses, and then they smashed belongings. Red Guards developed their own agenda. Some of them eventually came to realize that their parents were the targets. So they became profoundly disillusioned by the Cultural Revolution. And also, in the meantime, there were actually different Red Guard organizations who were fighting against each other for power. Power was very addictive. They were fighting against each other, and things were really beyond control. Even Mao could not control the situation. Weapons and guns were actually distributed to different Red Guard organizations. China was literally in civil war. Then Mao made a decision. Okay, you guys should all go to the countryside in the name of receiving re-education from peasants. So off we went. Every member of my generation went to the countryside. They dispersed the Red Guard organizations. But of course, many of us, we were not Red Guards. It didn't matter. Okay. All members of my generation, with few exceptions, were sent to the countryside. Okay, this was Mao's way to sort of bring the chaos to an end. None of us really realized that we would stay in the countryside for 10 years until the death of Mao. So I went to the countryside in 1967. I came back in 1977. There is a natural tendency to avoid disorder, to avoid disturbance. If you keep that in mind, maybe you can understand some of their policies today. You may not support their policies, but you can understand where these policies came from. And we all know economic development requires stability.